just to give it to my master. Yeah. Oh, it's my master calling. Hello, Master Money. How are you today? Oh, you want me to buy an iPad 4? No, an iPad. Oh, the new one. Do I get that with cellular? Oh, of course I get it with cellular. How silly of me. Oh, absolutely, I'll do that right now, Master. Oh, I get to add an iPad to my thing. I'll just put it on my credit card. It's all good. Okay. Oh, do I hear knocking? Do you hear knocking? You do hear knocking? Oh, dear. I thought it was my imagination. Oh, dear. Oh, it's my master again. Hello, Master. I do so love talking to you. What do you want me to buy this time? With all my hard-earned money? Jimmy Choos! Oh, you know my heart so well. And the matching handbag. Oh, Master, I do so love serving you. Okay, I'll do that straight away, Master. Oh, excellent. Straight on to the credit card. It goes with the Jimmy Choos. Oh my gosh, Jimmy Choos on the credit card. Are you sure you can't hear knocking? Because I'm pretty sure I can hear knocking. Oh, it's the phone again. Oh, it's not my master. Hello? Yes, this is she. I hope there's nothing wrong with my credit card. I'm sorry, where are you from? Acme Debt Collectors. Oh, you're at my door knocking? I'm sorry, I'm not actually home right now. I'll be home later. Yes, I will definitely see you later. Bye-bye.
That sinking feeling. How many of you have had the debt collector at the door? You don't want to admit that, do you? Have you ever been at the checkout and you put your card in and they say it's been rejected? Has that ever happened? That doesn't often happen to me. Have you ever had an ATM eat your card? Yeah, it's a sinking feeling, isn't it? And I want to share with you today, we've been talking about mastering various aspects of your life. So we talked about mastering your past, mastering your time, mastering your mind, but today's a scary one. So brace yourself. I want to talk about mastering your money, because of all the things we can talk about, it's often been said that the last part of the body to be sanctified is the back pocket. And it's probably true. These are all important aspects of your life, but nothing seems to dominate our modern life like money, does it? It's incredible. If you don't master your money, it's going to master you. So please understand, I'm not trying to get your money into church. This is not preaching to try and get you to give to church, okay? I just want to share on money, on how it masters us and how we can master it. And I'm also not giving financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, but I'm not an idiot either. So there's a few basic principles about money, which many of us would know, but we kind of get overwhelmed with life. And suddenly all these bills and stuff come and you've got to sort of juggle it in. Do you know that feeling? You get to the end of the month and you look how much money you've got and how much bills you've got, and it's a kind of a juggle? Yes? Am I the only one? Thank goodness for that. But I believe we need to discover what God says about how we can master our money instead of letting our money master us. So the question is, first question for you is, who's serving who? You know, back in the 1960s, a United States Senate committee predicted, this is what they predicted in the 60s, all right? They predicted that by the year 2000, the working week would be down to just 14 hours a week, and that we would have at least 7 weeks a year holiday. Has that happened? No. Why hasn't it happened? With all the time-saving devices and stuff that we have, why hasn't it happened? Do you know why it hasn't happened? Because they did not factor in the incredible greed that people have for more. So rather than relax and have a little less, we work twice as hard to get more. Does that make sense? That's why we're not having all this time off. Because we want more and more and more. Mark 10 verse 17 says this, and 17 and on. This is a familiar story, but I want you to look at it in a fresh way, because I believe the Lord has something for us here. Mark, in fact, open your Bibles. Mark chapter 10. This is really important. Verse 17. As Jesus was setting out on a journey, a man ran up and knelt before him and asked, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus said to him, "Why do you call me good? No one is good except God alone. You know the commandments. Do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not bear false witness, do not defraud, honor your father and mother." And the man said to him, "Teacher, all of these I have kept from my youth." And Jesus looked at him and loved him. That's a key thing. Jesus was not condemning this man. He looked at him and loved him. And he said this, "You lack one thing. Go and sell all that you have and give it to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and come, follow me." Then it says this, disheartened by the saying, the man went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. You see, this young man, we call him the rich young ruler. This young man had great wealth. He thought he had great wealth, but in fact his great wealth had him. He didn't possess his money possessed him. And by the way, that applies to many of us today. It really does. And it does. You don't even have to have money to be possessed by money. Did you know that? Many of the people I know who think constantly about money haven't got any. So money right through the Bible, it talks about money. It's a very important issue back then and also now. So let me point out that money is not bad. How many of you think money is bad? Good. If you think it's bad, give it to me. I'll make it good. No problem. Okay. But money is not bad. It's not evil. It's not good either. It's just neutral. It's not wrong to have money. It's not wrong to be wealthy. Neither is it necessarily a sign of God's blessing. We think that if someone is rich, God must be blessing them. That's not true. We have a different role, all of us, and some of us might be more wealthy than others. But it's not a reflection of God's blessing on you, but it can be. Does that make sense? But it's not necessarily. I know people who have tons of money, they're very wealthy, but their marriage is falling apart and their kids are falling away from the Lord and they're not really wealthy. They have money, but they're not wealthy. See, money doesn't buy happiness. You can just be miserable in comfort. That's all. I'd rather be happy. The San Francisco Federal Reserve reports that now this is very interesting, all else being equal, suicide risks are higher in wealthier neighborhoods. Do you know why? They've analyzed this. Do you know why? It's a demonstration of the folly of keeping up with the Joneses. So if the suicide rates are higher for people who are living in wealthy neighborhoods but aren't quite wealthy enough to look like everybody else. And so they overcommit themselves trying to keep up with the Joneses. You see, you and I, we all face a disease in our bodies, in our minds, in our spirits, and the disease is called affluenza. Have you heard of it? Affluenza? It's a contagious disease that affects all of us. We are all infected with it, and it makes us insatiably crave more and more. Now, how many of you here have a new generation iPhone in the last 1 or 2 iPhones? Anybody? A few. How many of you here have a fairly new generation phone? Yes. I have an Android. You might have an iPhone. How many of you here have a car that's less than 5 years old? How many of us have, here's an interesting one. How many of us have rooms at our house we haven't been in for a month? It's true. Australians live in the biggest houses on earth. Did you know that? We live in the biggest houses on earth. And most of the rooms we don't even go into. So, you know, that new TV, that new computer, ouch, I'll move right on. Whether we can afford it or not, we've got to have it now. We've got to have it. We've got to have it now. I mean, saving for things is so old-fashioned. Delayed gratification is so last century. We don't do that anymore. We whack it on credit. 1 Timothy 6, verse 6 to 10 says this. Listen to this. This is Paul. He says, "Godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into this world, and we cannot take anything out of this world. But if we have food and clothing, with these we will be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all evil. And it is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and have pierced themselves with many pangs. See, money is not the root of all evil. They say money is the root of all evil. Not true. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Not evil per se, but all kinds of bad things come when you love money that much. In our society, teaches us to love the stuff from the very beginning, doesn't it? From the moment you are born, it's all about money. We get it shoved down our throat right through school, right through our working life. People love money so much that they will do anything for it. You look out there in the world, they will sell their time for money. They will sell their bodies for money. They will sell their souls for money. And very often we spend it faster than we make it. Even in the first century, Paul was concerned about this affluenza thing. He didn't even own a credit card. Today it's, buy now, pay later. How many of you heard that? Buy now, pay later. If ever there was anything the devil says to us, it's that phrase. Buy now, pay later. You look at any sin you want to do or don't want to do that's in front of your eyes, the devil will be saying, do it now, don't worry about the consequences. Because that's what he says, buy now, pay later. But this is like, this thing controls our whole lives. Instead of waiting and saving, we want it now. And many times we put it on credit, things we don't need, but we do desire, even when we know we will not be able to pay it off. Now, I did a little bit of research. Zach, you'll love this because it's got lots of figures through it. I don't understand figures, but I did a bit of research. Australia has more than 16 million credit cards, accruing a debt nationally of over $33 billion. That's just credit cards. That's our country. If you combine that with personal loan debt, not house and stuff, personal loan debt, Australians now owe more than $109 billion. That is more than $4,300 for every man, woman and child. And that's like credit card and personal loan debt. In fact, in a recent survey, more than 10% of us are expecting to live our entire lives with a debt that we will never pay. More than 10% of our population thinks, I will never get out of debt. And many of us have been caught up in the debt trap. Christians say that the things of this world don't satisfy, that only knowing and serving Christ can truly satisfy. But we don't live like it. You see, Paul said the rich fall into a snare and the wannabe rich fall into the same snare. He suggests that godliness with contentment is great gain. Now, let me get this straight, Paul. Are you saying that if we have a roof over our heads and food on the table and clothes on our back, that we can be content, even without the latest iPhone or the latest computer? Is that possible? I believe it is. You see, it's all about discontent. So I want to talk briefly about the content of discontent. What is it that makes us discontent? See, discontent is an all-pervasive thing in 21st century life. Marketers set out to make you discontent. Did you know that? They never want you to be satisfied, because if you're satisfied, you'll stop buying their stuff. So advertisers set you up to try and make you discontent with what you've got. And any sort of advertising starts by inflaming that discontent and saying, you can't be happy, you haven't got this. How many times have you heard an advertisement that says, hey, you've got the best car, don't buy ours? Have you ever heard that? Have you ever heard somebody say, hey, your phone is still current, don't bother checking out the new iPhone? They don't say that, do they? They inflame your discontent all the time. Why are we so intent on discontent? No one is contented these days. We all want more. Hebrews 13 verse 5 says this, keep your life free from the love of money and be content with what you have. For he said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. It's so hard to be content, isn't it? Isn't it? You're very quiet out there today. It's hard to be content because as soon as you get something, if you buy a new car, you drive it off the lot, it's old already. And they bring out a new car that parks itself. My car doesn't park itself. Have you seen me parallel park? No, not worth seeing, trust me. Listen, we grow content when we see God as our sole provider, and we grow discontent when we focus on gratifying the desires of our flesh instead of looking only to genuine needs. Genuine needs. I was talking with Kaylee a couple of days ago, our little 2-year-old, and she said this, and I really like this. She said, "But I need chocolate." And I went, it's not I want, I need it. And we're like that with the Lord. Lord, I need this new thing. I need this new, whatever. We don't need it, do we? We have so much, we don't need it. One of my favorite passages is Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. Do you like that passage? We quote that all the time when we face difficulty. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. Well, listen to the context of that, because I'm going to read Philippians 4:11 through 13. Have a listen to what Paul's actually saying here. He's not giving you like a blank check to write out. I can do whatever I want because God strengthens me. Listen to what he's saying. Verse 11. Not that I'm speaking of being in need, for I've learned, whatever the situation I am in, to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I've learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. Did you know that? That verse is talking about being content. When he says, I can do all things through him who strengthens me, he's saying, if I've got nothing, I can still do all things. That's the context of that particular verse. We often quote that, but we don't really know the context behind it. Paul is saying, I can do both poverty and wealth through Christ who strengthens me. If we truly value our relationship with Christ over our fleshly desires, we can learn to be content regardless of what we do and do not have. Paul faced many trials and he was blessed in many ways, and he had joy and contentment that did not depend on what he had. Paul was upbeat even in a prison because he looked to the Lord. He didn't look to his circumstances. Proverbs 30, verse 8 and 9 says this, remove far from me falsehood and lying. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food that is needful for me, lest I be full and deny you and say, who is the Lord? Or lest I be poor and steal and profane the name of the Lord. So what he's saying is, Lord, help me to be content whether I've got a lot or a little, because I don't want to profane your name either way. True wealth, listen to me, true wealth is not about having more. It's about desiring less. That's what true wealth is. So let me give you some tips to master your money, and then we'll work through a few steps. Are you terrified at this point? You're frightened. I'm going to say, give all your money to the church and it'll all be all right. That's not what I'm going to say. But hopefully we can come up with something that makes sense. You see, to master your money, you need to do it or it will master you. Jesus told us in Matthew 6 that we cannot serve two masters. And you heard Sam on the phone here earlier serving two masters. Oh, hello, master, what do you want me to buy? It's like a wife, really. It's not true, come on. I heard about a guy who had his credit card stolen. Did you hear about him? Had his credit card stolen. The police said, why didn't you report it? He said, I didn't report it because the guy who stole it spends less than my wife. So, you cannot serve two masters. One of them has to be the master, the other by default becomes the slave. We go to jobs we don't like, doing things we don't really enjoy, to buy things we don't really want. I ask you, are you the slave or the master? Think about it. Matthew 6, verse 24 says this. Jesus saying this, no one can serve two masters, for he will either hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. Now, our society demands that we serve money, but Jesus said you cannot serve both God and money. He didn't say it would be difficult. He says it's impossible to serve God and money. We cannot serve both. One has got to be master. So the question is, who's going to be master? Here's some tips on how you can master your money and serve the Lord instead of having your money master you. Number one, recognize who owns what. The crazy thing is, we talk about our money. It's not even your money. Whose money is it? There you go. Psalm 24 verse 1, the earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof, the world and all those who dwell therein. God owns it all. What does this mean in practical terms? First, it means that God has the right to take and use whatever he wants, whenever he wants. We are simply managers of the resources that he entrusts to us. Secondly, if we recognize God's position as the ultimate owner, that he holds the whole world in his hands, then every spending decision we face becomes a spiritual decision. It's not about what I want, it's about what he wants. Instead of asking whether or not we can afford to buy something, the question should be, does God want me to use his resources in this way? Does that make sense? If you make this one change, it will change the way you deal with money, because it's ultimately all his. You know, Job was a rich man. Back in the day, Job was incredibly rich. If you read in the Bible all of his flocks and all of this sort of stuff that he had. But what he said when he was afflicted, what he said was this in Job 1:21, he said this, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I shall return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. That's faith. I know how to love the Lord when I'm being blessed. I know how to love the Lord when I'm in poverty, when I have riches, when I'm in poverty, when I abase and when I abound. It's easy to honor God when things are going well. When things go tough, do you still honor God? Are your eyes on him or are your eyes on the money? It's very pertinent, isn't it? The second thing is, now this sounds basic, but it's important, spend less than you earn. I know it sounds, debt reduction 101. Most Australians don't get this. You've got to spend less than you earn. It's simple mathematics. Stop buying things and putting them on credit. Pay for it when get it, but pay for it. And if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. Credit card doesn't change that. So no matter how much money people have, they will always spend, to their limit. Have you noticed that? Spending less than we earn is the number one key to achieving financial freedom and security, regardless of what happens to the overall economy. So it's simple, it's easy to apply. Look, Proverbs 21:20 says this, precious treasure and oil are in a wise man's dwelling, but a foolish man devours it. If you spend more than you earn, you're devouring your life. It will come home to roost at some point. Be wise and spend less. The third thing is to avoid debt, the debt trap. The average family, listen to this, the average family devotes 25% of its spendable income, which is what's left after taxes, to paying outstanding debts, much of it in interest. Now, I'm not saying don't go into debt. I'm in debt. Who's in debt here in some way? Pretty much all of us. Right? So I'm not saying don't go into debt, but we need to understand that some debts are good debts and some are not so good debt. See, going into debt presumes upon your future, and it pre-commits our resources and it limits our financial flexibility in the future. It dictates in the future what we can and can't afford if we commit ourselves now. Proverbs 22:7 says this, the rich rules over the poor and the borrower is the slave of the lender. When you're in debt, you're a slave. How many of you know that? If you go to the bank, in the old days you used to sort of cuddle up to the bank manager because he'd take care of you. But that doesn't happen anymore, does it? What's with bank managers these days? They don't like us anymore. We're just dollar signs, Going into debt makes you a slave to the bank and the credit card companies, but some debt is good debt. Now, what is good debt and bad debt? Now, I'm not saying this is like a rule of thumb, okay? If you go into debt to afford something that ultimately will make you money, it's not bad debt. Does that make sense? So if you put your money into a business that's going to flourish, if you buy your home that goes up in value. What bad debt is consumer debt, where you buy toys and the latest this, that, and consumer goods and stuff like that, and you go into debt to get stuff that's going to perish. That doesn't make any sense, does it? But we do it all the time because we want the stuff. How many of you have bought a new car ever? A few of you? When you drove it off the lot, did they tell you that the value immediately went down? They didn't tell you that, but it did. Immediately goes down. Right? So why would you invest in a car unless it's something really special? like one of Rod's hot rods or something, that will go up in value, you would hope. But most of those sorts of things go down in value. Now, even as a church, we had to get a loan to buy this building and this facility. But I'm so thrilled that as a church, over the last 2 years, is it, Zach, we've paid more than $70,000 off our principal. Near enough. 95,000 we've paid off the principal of this. Yeah, come on, give the Lord a hand for that. That's awesome. So what we've done is we've bought an asset, and that's a good thing. But borrowing for cars and toys and all that sort of stuff makes you a slave to someone else. The fourth thing is, some of us need to have plastic surgery. Proverbs 17:18, the one who lacks sense gives a pledge and puts up security in the presence of his neighbor. Credit cards are very convenient. I have a credit card on my phone now. I don't even have to have the card. I can just wave my phone around and I can rack up credit. How convenient is that? You might as well give me a little chip here and a little chip here and away we go, Because credit cards, they're a trap. And buying consumer debt on a credit card is foolish. If you cannot control your credit cards, they are a trap that will entrap you for years, perhaps your whole life. Most of them have interest up to 4 times higher than your house loan. So you need to be able to pay a credit card off and do it fast. And some of us here might need to have plastic surgery, cut up those cards because we can't control it. And sometimes it's not even your fault. I don't know if I've told you this, but I was looking at my credit card statement and I thought, gosh, that's a lot of money. Where did that go? And I looked at it and I realized after a bit of exploration that I had bought Mr. and Mrs. Valdez a return trip from Miami, Florida to Lima, Peru, first class. On my credit card. So I called up my bank and they said, call up American Airlines. So I called up American Airlines and they said, oh, that's sad. So do you want to cancel it or do you want to keep it? I said, I don't want to keep it. I don't even know who these guys are. I've never been to Miami, but there's this bill. You see how dangerous this can be? They've now got little things that can sort of, when you walk past, they can scam your credit card number. We need to think about this stuff. If you can't control your credit card, plastic surgery. The fifth thing is plan your finances. Some people set financial goals, makes a lot of sense, but most of us just stumble from crisis to crisis. Is that you? Lots of us are there. Overcommitting ourselves and becoming slaves to debt. Proverbs 21 verse 5 says this, the plans of the diligent surely lead to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. So you need to think twice or 3 times before you commit to any of these things. Can you afford it? Do you really need it now? Is it good? Or is it bad debt? How do you fit the pieces of your financial puzzle together? Now, money experts also suggest that you should keep some cash liquid. Talking to the older ones here, I know many older people who live in great big homes and are cash poor. It's foolishness. You need to have a quality of life, and you need to manage your money better. And I'm not an expert. I'm not telling you to do stuff, but talk to people who know what they're doing. You don't want to live like a pauper when you're sitting in this massive big mansion, as many do. A cardinal sin in finances also is to max yourself out. Some young people, they are committed so heavily on their mortgage to get in their house, they can't afford to buy curtains for the bedroom. Because all of their money just goes in servicing that loan. If all of your money is going to service that loan, at some point, if the economy turns, you are in serious trouble. You've got to build in, allowances for those sorts of times. Wisdom would say build those things in. But if you're not sure, talk to a financial advisor or someone who knows what they're doing. Not that I know what I'm doing, but if anything goes wrong, I'd like to keep a bit of a buffer in there. Is anyone with me? Yeah, I think it's important. The sixth thing is balance the books. Now, I'm a businessman, and I'm very practical in my mind. Anybody here been in business? Yeah, you probably figured this one out. Listen, if you're in financial trouble, spend less or earn more. That's my word of wisdom. Spend less or earn more. So some of you might say, well, I can earn more. I can take a few extra hours or take in a border or mow lawns or sell eggs or honey or something like that. And a little bit can make a big difference. But the easier one to do is to spend less. Hello? I know some of you are going, I don't want to hear this. I've got my eyes on that new computer and I don't want to hear this. Well, open your heart to the Lord, because more than 2 million Australians have slid into debt that they don't believe they will ever get out of. Money has a nasty habit of luring us in, and we usually spend to our means. Have you noticed that? You start with a little bit when you're doing it tough and you're first married and what have you, and you spend to that, but you rein it in. Anybody relate to that? Yeah? And then you get that promotion, you get a bit more money in, so you spend a bit more. And then you get another, something else happens, you spend a bit more. And we spend up to all the money we have. Doesn't matter if you're earning $500 a week or $2,500. We spend up to that level. But it's dangerous, because if anything happens and your income contracts, your spending is right out there. So you've got to be very careful with all of this stuff. Earn more or spend less. Ecclesiastes 5:10 says this: he who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity. And how true is that? In the 1870s, the richest man in the world was a fellow called John D. Rockefeller. Have you heard of him? Richest man in the world. He was an oil tycoon. And someone asked him, how much money is enough money? And he replied, just a little more. Now, he's a multi-billionaire who wants just a little more. You see how seductive this stuff is? This stuff can really suck you in. Nothing has changed. So how do you master your money? Let me finish with a few points on how you can master your money instead of letting your money master you. How can you move ahead? Well, number one, decide to make a change. Anything starts with a decision. I have a cousin, lovely bloke, love him dearly. He's financially pretty strapped. Him and his family live in a house that's way too small for them. They never have any spare money, and life is a real struggle. And they came to stay with us, and I don't know if you know anything about me, I love coffee. Anybody here love coffee? Just a few. So I have a nice coffee machine because I believe in abase or abound, and I need to abound with a nice coffee machine. So I said to him, hey, do you like coffee? He said, oh man, I love coffee. He said, great. Here's a great coffee machine, great beans, great. He said, oh no, he said, I go down. And he went down to the shops every day to buy a designer coffee from the coffee shop down there. Every day. He said, every day I have my designer coffee. Well, they're strapped for cash. That's probably $40 a week at least, not counting the trip down there and back, that he could put into the family budget if he just drank the coffee that I had, which is good coffee. You see, this is what we're like. We get into these habits and it's very hard to break them out. So decide to make a change. Every day you want to see if you can make small changes. The first step to mastering your money is to make the little changes. Remember Song of Songs that says this, the little foxes spoil the vine? It is. Those little decisions can make or break you in the area of money. So the first step is to decide to make a change. Isaiah 43 says this, remember not the former things, consider not the things of old. Behold, I am doing a new thing. So doing the same thing over and over, changing nothing will change. If you are in debt, if you are struggling financially, if you do exactly what you're doing now, nothing will change. So we need to make a commitment to make a change, even small changes. The second thing is we need to listen to the right advice. Now, some of us are like this. Who listens to advice like this? Some of us do. But see a financial advice. There's also several Christian groups who can help you get out of debt if you're in debt. But don't just keep digging the hole deeper. Make a decision to talk to someone about getting out of debt. And make sure it's a trusted friend or the right group or a financial. Don't talk to your mates down the pub about how to get out of debt because they don't know. Their idea of getting out of debt is put $1,000 on horse number 4 in race 6. That doesn't work. How many of you have tried that? It doesn't work. Proverbs 12 verse 15 says this, the way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man listens to advice. So seek advice from people who are trustworthy. The third thing is move ahead slow and steady. Now Aesop's fables, you remember those? Slow and steady wins the race. Most money problems are not solved instantly. Have you noticed that? I'm in debt, Lord. I need your help. I have money problems. You don't get a big puff of, smoke and suddenly your money problems are gone. Is that right? It's usually a long, slow road to move ahead, but you need to be committed to see results. Make slow and steady progress, making changes and sticking to them, and be prepared for the long haul. As Zechariah 4 verse 10 says, don't despise the day of small beginnings. So chances are, if you are struggling with your money right now, chances are that will not be solved instantly. You have to start small and purpose in your heart to see it through. Some of you are waiting for the instant. When that lottery comes through, I'll be right. Listen, God's not going to solve your problems by giving you a lottery win or letting you rob a bank. That's not his way. Do you know most lottery winners lose every cent they've won within 2 years? Did you know that? It's incredible. You see, they don't have the mentality to manage the money. They might have a couple of $1 million come in. They just spend like crazy. The fourth thing, and I really recommend this, is being generous. I know this sounds like a paradox, but it's true. When money controls you, you are tight for money. Is that right? So the tendency is to be tight and to not be generous with others. And I think this is a trap, because the more you focus on what you don't have, the more it starts to master your thoughts and your life. Now, please understand, I am not a proponent of the prosperity gospel. I don't believe that if you give your money to God, that you can demand financial riches in return. Am I clear? I don't believe name it and claim it, blab it and grab it, all that sort of stuff. I don't believe in giving to get. I've heard people say, if you have a financial need, give to our ministry and God will get. That's not true. I would call that spiritual manipulation, would you? Because that's not true at all. But there is a general principle that if you have a generous spirit, God takes care of everything else. How many of you know that? I've proved it time and again in my life. When I put him first, when I have a generous spirit, all I can tell you, I can't tell you how he does it, but all I can tell you is that God brings resources and blessings into my life, financial and other, at the right time. Proverbs 11:24 bears this out. Listen to this. One gives freely, yet grows all the richer. Another withholds what he should give and only suffers want. Now, some folks, when things get tough, they become tight, and they are tighter than a fish's backside, and that's watertight, right? That's where they're at. They are tight. They don't give anything to anyone. They stop giving to the church. They stop giving to their friends. Everywhere they go, they're the last guy hanging back, hoping someone else will pay for them. That's the wrong spirit. Even in our worst possible financial moments, and Fiona and I have had them, we've made it our practice to be generous. When we lost all of our money, as you probably know, we had an investment collapse, took everything we had, including our home. We lost our home and had to move, but we kept Lily House going because we wanted to keep a generous spirit. And even in our worst possible times, we've tried to stay generous. Because I believe that if you're generous, the Lord can take care of the rest. Do you? If you ever go out with me, if you are, sadly inflicted with my company at some point, and we go to a coffee shop or a restaurant, many of you will know I'm the first guy to go forward and pay for that meal. Why? Is it because I want you to shout me down and offer to do it? No. I just want to be generous. Because the more generous I am, the more God just seems to bring stuff in. And I can't explain it. I just trust him for it. So let me talk for a moment about, and this is the big T word. I know you're all looking very nervous. I want to talk about tithing. Some of you are going, oh no, I knew it had come to this. I knew if you're going to talk about money, it's going to have the T word in it. Let me tell you about tithing. I can't tell you what to give. I have people who are not in this church call me up and say, before I visit your church, I want to know your position on tithing. True. Don't we, Tanya? We get those sort of requests through. How do you answer that as part? I'm all for it. Bring it on. I'm not going to tell you what you should and shouldn't give because that's between you and the Lord. Okay? But what I can tell you is my own experience in this, if you like. Ignite is a generous church. I'm so thrilled and proud of our church because we are a generous people, are we not? And I love that. I hope we get more and more generous. But I'm not going to tell you that you have to give all you have to the church. But let me tell you, I always err on the side of being more generous. This is my own personal stance, nothing to do with you. I just want to show you my position on this. Personally, I tithe, but I don't just tithe because I believe that 10% of my income, which goes to the church, is the baseline. It's what I give on top of that that counts. That's my opinion. I don't care what you do, but that's my opinion. You see, I want to trust God. I don't want to tithe. See, tithing is 10%, right? Am I right? Look at the spirit that's behind tithing. Gosh, if I sit down and I calculate it out, I don't want to give it, but God says I better, so 10% comes to, $57.26 and not a cent more. You see, that's the mentality behind tithing. I don't want to tithe, I want to trust. God, let me give generously, and I'll leave the rest up to you. If you want to master your money, stop trying to manipulate God with your money. If you don't give to the church, are you afraid that God will zap you? I'm not afraid that God will zap me, but I don't want to be accused of robbing God. You see, in the book of Malachi, if you've got a Bible, open it up to this. This is important. The book of Malachi, chapter 3, verse 8 through 10, God says this. I didn't say this. Don't say, Pastor Darren, you're so, I didn't say this. God said this, all right? Have a listen to this. This is what God says to the people of Israel who were not giving to him. He says this, will a man rob God? Yet you are robbing me. But you say, how have we robbed you? In your tithes and offerings. You are cursed with a curse, for you are robbing me, the whole nation of you. Then God says this, bring the full tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house, and thereby put me to the test, says the Lord of hosts, and see if I will not open the windows of heaven for you and pour down upon you a blessing until there is no more need. It's the only time in the Bible God says, test me. Why would he say that? Because he knows that for many of us, we don't have control of our money has control of us. And the greatest test is, give it to him and take your hands off and say, I'm going to trust you. And what does he say? I don't want to rob God, but what does he say? Test me and see if I will not open the floodgates of heaven. Am I preaching give to get? No. But I'm preaching honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of your crop. Then your vats will be filled to overflowing. Your barns will be filled to overflowing and your vats will brim over with new wine. I'm not after your money, but God is. Remember, it's not even our money. I just don't want to rob God, and I don't want you to be robbed of blessing in your life. When you keep a generous heart, you will find that he will meet all of your needs and then some. And I'm living testimony to this, that if you want to master your money, try trusting instead of tithing. Make sense? I hope you're not offended by that. That's just my position on it, but I proved it again and again. The fifth thing is decide to seek God's first. Jesus said in Matthew 6, verse 21, where your heart is, there your treasure will be also. He says not to worry about our provision, our clothes, our food, etc., because God has it all under control. Then he says this, Matthew 6, 31 to 33. Listen to this. This is important. Do not be anxious, saying, what shall we eat? What shall we drink? What shall we wear? For the Gentiles seek after these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. Does he know you need clothes? Yes. Does that include Jimmy Choo? Is that a shoe? Anyway, he knows you need clothes. He knows you need food. He knows you need a place to rest your head. In our modern way, he knows, you need a car, you need this, you need that. He understands that. But then listen to what it says. Your Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things are given to you as well. I stand here today as living testimony to this. Now, I work for money, you work for money, but in the end, money comes and goes, doesn't it? If you don't believe me, invest in Bitcoin. because it comes and it goes really fast. Raymond was showing me and it's like everything else is like this. Bitcoin's like this. I got seasick just looking at the chart. It was incredible. But I'm living testimony of this. Becoming a pastor of this church has allowed me to prove this point in my life. I've stepped back from when I took on this role, I realized that there was not enough hours in my week to serve properly. So what I did was I cancelled a consultancy job that I had. I cut back business groups that I was involved in that brought quite a bit of money into my family. I scaled back my own business practice, and Fiona gave up her job. We gave up all these things to serve in this church, but I can tell you that we have honestly not felt any financial loss at all. In fact, when the accountant, I sat down with the accountant and I said, we've given this up, that's 20 grand here, and we've given this up for 25 grand. All this stuff we've given up, and the accountant's sitting there looking at the books, he says, really? He said, I don't see it. I can't explain that, but God's doing a remarkable thing. All I know is that if you put Him first, seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, all these things are added to you. I'm officially earning less, but it doesn't feel like it. Why? Because God loves me and appreciates that I seek Him first rather than grasping at more and more money. Trust me, you can't outgive God. Can anybody attest to that? You can't outgive Him because He's looking out for you. Now, I'm serving Jesus and trusting Him to take care of myself and my family and our money needs, and true to His promise, He does. You see, the ultimate secret for mastering your money, instead of having your money master you, the ultimate secret to mastering your money is to seek first His kingdom and leave it up to Him. Be generous, be wise with your money, get out of debt, learn to delay gratification. But in the end, if you live for Christ, then that's the main thing you care about. You don't even notice the other stuff. Now, I know you need money. Does anybody here need money? My hand's up. Come on. I know you need money, as do I. But if you've given your life to Jesus, it has to include your wallet and your bank account. And now I know you have financial needs and desires, and so do I. And God knows that. But remember, if you seek Him first, He is not out to punish you. He is out to bless you in every way in your life. And sometimes that's not financial. Sometimes you can have a little less and be a lot more content. Is that right? So I believe that the Lord is challenging us this morning. He's not challenging you to put more money in the plate as it goes past. He's challenging you to honor Him with all of your life, including your finances. And He's challenging all of us. He's saying, seek first my kingdom and my righteousness, and let me take care of the rest. I've proved it again and again in my life, and I know it will work for you. If you just honor God, if you have a generous spirit, and you serve Him with all parts of your life, including your finances, He will work a miracle in your life. I guarantee it. I don't want to be mastered by my money. I want to be master of my money, and I want Him to be master of me, mastering my money. Does that make sense? Would you bow your heads for a moment for me?